This is my daily routine for homeschooling, utilizing AmblesideOnline.org's free online resources. I used it daily as a resource for my homeschooling. I posted the schedule on the wall, mostly so that I could have a quick reference to it, and I wouldn't have it written down somewhere where I would have lost it in some pile of papers in some random corner of my house. It was also a useful visual to show my son, who was my third grader this year. Our goal was to teach him how to read. We would start our day with morning devotional. I woke up first every day. I would go downstairs and make breakfast. When breakfast was ready, I would play a piece of music by our composer of the week. I really enjoy this routine. I found the piece of music in the morning was a great way to call everyone down to school for the day. My daughter at this time was still going to public school, so she had to wake up super early and catch the bus. So when she was ready and right before she left for the bus, we would all kneel down and have our morning prayer. That's on the perfect morning. Not every morning happened exactly the way I planned it. Let's just say that. But I did my best to make sure we said our family prayer before my daughter left to catch the bus. And once she was gone, I would show my son the picture of the day, which was a picture just on the internet. I'd pull up a piece of artwork by a famous artist. I do appreciate the Charlotte Mason method. I am attempting to do that, but I must point out here that this was my first year homeschooling, and I had not yet learned how to do the picture study and the composer study the way that Charlotte Mason taught it. This was my way of leveling it down so that I could fit it into my schedule every day. So we didn't do an in-depth study, but we did appreciate the daily exposure. My son was supposed to make his bed before he came downstairs, and that didn't always happen every day either. We're still at the beginning of learning these habits of the good life, aren't we? After the music was finished, I would usually turn on some audio scriptures so we could listen while we finished eating breakfast. Once we were finished eating, we would usually move straight into reading our first history lesson of the day while my son was digesting his meal. I would sit on the couch, he would lay down on the carpet, and we would have a lovely little morning history lesson right there in the living room. Charlotte Mason is such a beautiful method for me because I enjoy reading out loud. It's something that I love doing for my children. Once we were done with our history lesson, we would move on to math and English, usually around 8 o'clock in the morning. I would start with my third grader, and once we were done with his math and English lesson, I would move on to my 4-year-old. Now, technically, my 4-year-old is too young for school. In my opinion, that means you're also too young for video games. And he really wanted to play video games. So we came up with a deal that if you did these 5 things, Mommy would allow you to play 2 hours of video games. His 5 things were, of course, things that a 4-year-old could do. Get dressed, do your best to make your bed. That was probably the hardest one I gave him. Those big blankets were just too much for him. His little arms. So his daily dues were get dressed, make your bed, do your English lesson, piano practice, and practice reciting scripture verses. If he did those 5 things, then he earned the right to play video games. They were not required for him to do. He didn't have to do them, but neither were video games. He was not required to play video games. I didn't make him play them, but he wanted to play them. And if he was going to play video games, he was going to do these 5 things. So his morning sort of looked like get dressed, make your bed, eat breakfast. And after breakfast, he would play with his toys until Mommy was ready to help him with his daily dues. And I would help him do every task because he's only 4 and I don't expect him to do that by himself. While I am working with the 4-year-old, my 3rd grader is doing what we called his morning apple picking. I made a list of quick, easy tasks that I knew he could do on his own, and I put them on cards shaped like apples. And he could pick one and do it. And he would go through this list and he would pick his next apple and go and do it, and pick his next apple and go and do it while I was working with his 4-year-old brother. At 9 o'clock, I would start English with the 4-year-old while the 3rd grader went and did his independent studies. And I will have you know that my 3rd grader actually asked to include typing into this because we discovered during the course of the school year that he wanted to learn how to type, and I thought that was a brilliant idea. So that became one of his morning apples as well. One of the trickiest parts was breaking down the music lessons for the 4-year-old, so he just had little bite-sized pieces to do every day. He did not do a piano lesson every day. He did a piece of a piano lesson every day, even if it was just counting to 4. And I would just break it down into a tiny little task like that. But moving on, after I was done working with the 4-year-old, we would have our hymn study. I would pick one hymn a week, and we would sing it every day at 9:45. I'm sorry, it's smudged out a little bit. It looks like 9:15, but it really was at around 9:45 a.m. We'd sing our song in preparation for poetry snack time, which was one of everyone's favorite parts of the day because it's essentially our morning break. We would cut up some apples, enjoy some poetry. I read them 3 poems, and then the next day I would read them 2 of those poems and a new one. So we would enjoy the poems for 3 days each, having a new one every day. About halfway through the year, we also came to the agreement that if my 3rd grader finished all of his apples by snack time, that he got to watch a YouTube video during snack time. He found that to be very motivating. And once we started doing that, he never dragged his feet again. So finding the right motivational influences on my children has really been the key to successful homeschooling in my experience. After poetry snack time, we moved on to our weekly lesson. We had 1 lesson every day. Monday was usually a science experiment. Tuesday was an art project. Wednesday was a music lesson, and this was a longer, drawn-out music lesson, like you would go to a piano teacher and play what you've practiced all week. So his daily do apple picking is his piano practice, which is his self-practice that he does on his own. This Wednesday music lesson is where I see how he has been practicing all week and give him some suggestions for improvement. Thursday, he draws a picture of something he's observed in nature that day. And Friday, he puts an entry in his copybook where he practices his handwriting in the most beautiful ways. His copybook is essentially an empty book full of lines, and he is transcribing quotes and scriptures and motivational lines, maybe proverb. Every Friday he makes 1 entry and he's done. So it doesn't take very long. It should take him as long as it takes him to write beautifully. The whole point of the copybook is it's going to be a beautiful book. By the time 11 o'clock rolled around, we were usually into our geography, and that changed from day to day as well. Some days it was reading Marco Polo inside, other days it was walking outside and talking about the Charlotte Mason points of geography and world studies. And other days we were at home playing with our atlas or doing a world puzzle. Secrets of the Swamp or Secrets of the Forest. I don't remember which book that was, but that was a science book about nature. I read that to him. It's important to note that I wasn't strict with timekeeping on this schedule. This was the general guideline that I posted at the beginning of the year, and then we just moved through these tasks organically. I enjoy the organization of knowing what to do, as well as the flexibility of getting to choose when to do it. We have usually done all of that before lunch. After lunch, sometimes Mommy has a workout to do, so I came up with afternoon apples. These were things that I thought would be good for him to do on his own after lunch, which were things like a life skill, a handicraft, reading, and fitness. I posted these pages on the door so that he could just pick one from each page and do them on his own while I was doing my workout. Problem was, my son did not know how to read, which means for the first half of the year, I sat down with him. He would read to me for 30 minutes every day after lunch. That was probably the most difficult part of our day because it was so frustrating both for him and for me, but it also was the most rewarding because this 30 minutes every day was what helped him. He used to struggle with each word he read, and then it would become every other word, and then he would struggle twice a sentence, and then only once a sentence, and then this progression happened over a series of months, and by Christmas time he had finished reading his first book, which was Pinocchio. Dude read Pinocchio, finished reading it around Christmas time, and then starting in January, he was such a good reader at that point that homeschooling got so much easier. Once he was reading to himself, the hardest thing for me to do was to figure out how to allow homeschooling to be easy, because it had been so difficult. Starting in January, we were on a roll. We knew the schedule. We knew the habits. We were doing a great job, and we really enjoy it. It took a lot of planning. It took a lot of preparation, and it took a lot of grit. But once we got through that first 4 months of homeschooling, we have been enjoying it ever since. And I hope that this will give you some ideas to help you in overcoming any challenges or struggles you may have. I appreciate the Charlotte Mason method. If I had the money, I would buy all of simply Charlotte Mason's material probably. But AmblesideOnline.org is a free resource, and that's how I am accomplishing all of these things currently. This is how I organized my day. I was usually beat by 9 p.m. I was passed out by 10. I did this all while pregnant, no less. As you get into the habit of homeschooling, it does become easier. It's not so raw. How do they word it? It's not that it gets easier, it's that you get stronger. Please let me know if this has helped you in any way. I give you my best from my family to yours.